After 2 long-awaited weeks, I have returned. That's right, I've actually managed to stop playing Doom Eternal for a long enough period of time to do something somewhat productive with my life. And yes, we're pretending making videos on the internet is being productive. Just let me have this one. Also, like and subscribe right now or Madao is guaranteed to fail his next job application, and you don't want that on your conscience, do you? Today, we're going to be continuing part 2 of my series, taking our retrospective look at Gintama, specifically chapters 64 to 97, but real quick, I'd like to talk about the first part of the series because I feel like I didn't get that video's point across as well as I should have. The beginning chapters are so important due to how many character introductions and elements of world building Sorachi managed to pack into the first 63 chapters. Now that the initial building blocks have been put in and we have our foundation for the story going onward, the author is able to begin transitioning from one-off episodic chapters, mainly there to introduce characters, and mini-arcs to add elements of world building, introduce new characters, set up future conflicts and enemy factions, to one-off episodic chapters mostly messing around with and developing the characters already introduced, and slowly growing in length arcs that still set up characters and bits of world building like previous arcs, but also begin to put in motion many of the plot points previously set up in the story. We start with an absolutely hilarious chapter coming off the tail end of the Umibuzo arc. Gin, Senpachi, and the rest of the gang are getting smashed in the hopes to forget Kagura after they think she's left odd jobs forever to live with her father. And the best part is Kagura is still there, hiding out, listening to their whole conversation. The premise of this episode is comical, and its ending is quite sweet. But the reason I love this chapter so much is because it feels like a little summary of the kind of comedy you can expect seeing throughout Gintama, as well as the kind of relationship the Oddjobs trio has. If you want a quick little speed run of what exactly you're getting yourself into and the people you're going to be experiencing throughout the show, I highly recommend reading or watching this chapter. Next is yet another hilarious chapter involving the police chief trying to crash his daughter's date with the help of the Shinsengumi. Nothing significant to the overall story occurs during this chapter, but being that Sogo is one of my favorite characters, I'd enjoyed it more than the average one-off chapter. Any chances to watch Sogo mess with people is warmly welcomed by me. The last chapter before we hit the first arc of this episode is mainly used to introduce the friendly new neighborhood florist, a character looking remarkably similar to the alien species known as the Dakini, introduced back in the Rengoku-kan arc. This is a classic don't judge a book by its cover story, although to be honest, I'd still be terrified around them, especially if it's ladybug season. This leads us to the first arc of this video, the Go Ninja arc. This is a fun little arc where Elizabeth is captured by the Endo government, so Katsura enlists Oddjobs to rescue him. They then politely ask Sachan to join them in their raid on the corrupt government facility, guarded by former Oniwabanshu ninja, including Zenzo, a man you may remember from a certain cult, or the Great War for Shonen Jump. This arc has very little importance besides giving us a taste of the corruption within the Endo government and having a good laugh. I mean, Elizabeth wasn't even kidnapped, but I can't help but love that Gintama style of clowning on absolutely everything, including its own plot. Then we go back to one episodic chapter including yet another of the 4 divas, known as the Peacock Princess, who controls most of the gambling dens throughout the Kabuki district. Yes, I know I said important recurring characters are going to be introduced during the actual arcs from now on in this story, and that's pretty much true. I'm only going to break that rule once more in this video, which feels like a drastic difference compared to the 20-ish characters introduced during the episodic portions of the first part of this series. Then we hit the Inugami arc. The Tendushu has returned, Sadaharu is relevant, and these girls show up. This arc is full of world building. We learn about the Dragon's Pulse, which is pretty much Earth's energy, and Dragon Holes, where the Earth's energy is released to the surface. Nations rise and fall due to their access to these holes and the lack thereof, so naturally the Tendushu, the alien group manipulating the Endo government and pulling the strings behind the scenes, are involved. The terminal was actually built on the largest of these dragon holes, known as the Yellow Dragon's Gate, and Sadaharu is the dog god responsible for protecting this dragon hole. Sadaharu was first called a dog god all the way back in the 10th chapter, but we had zero idea what that even meant. But now we know they guard the dragon holes, transform into this demonic looking thing if you give them strawberry milk, and can only return back to their normal dog forms if the Miko girls play a song, or if they can get them to stand in the middle of a satanic baseball field. This arc is great for many reasons. My personal favorite part being anytime the news girl is reporting on Oddjobs, it's comedy gold, but the most important part of this arc is its added elements of world building. Now we get 3 more episodic chapters that continue to develop and make jokes with the cast that has already been set up in the story. The first of which wrapping up the Inugami arc by placing Anna in Otei's cabaret club, creating a duo so powerful they could drain Jeff Bezos' entire bank account in under 15 minutes. Then we learn that as different as they may seem, Gin and Hijikata are nearly 2 sides of the same coin, until last we get a bit of development relating to Zenzo and Sachan, as well as their involvement with the Oniwabanshu. This brings us to the infant strike arc, where Gin has a baby. Due to this, Gintama transitions into what it is for the rest of its run in Shonen Jump, a legal-based anime where Gin is sued by his baby mama due to his lack of child support payments. No, the baby's actually the child of this woman and this sickly man. In this arc, the sickly man's father, who is a corrupt businessman who took advantage of his ties to terrorist organizations in order to climb through the ranks and take out his competition, tries to kidnap her baby after his son dies in order to protect his assets when he inevitably passes away too. This is a tale of how greed can corrupt a man who originally had good intentions and forgiveness, I guess. I mean, I get this corrupt grandfather only became greedy due to him correlating money to the idea of protecting his family's security, and that spiraled out of control as greed often does, but I personally wouldn't forgive someone after they tried to kidnap my baby, torture me, and sent a hit squad after me. But maybe that's just me. Besides telling this sad family story, and yet again giving Gin the chance to be endearing and relatable, the main purpose of this arc is to introduce the blind swordsman, Nizo Okada. A common trope seen throughout anime, samurai movies, and Japanese culture in general. If you're watching an anime, this kind of character is probably going to show up at some point. This arc also shows the audience additional corruption within Endo, that it's not just aliens, space pirates, and terrorists draining the life out of this country, but dirty businessmen as well. After this, we get 8 more episodic chapters messing around with the characters previously introduced and doing what Gintama does best, make us laugh. The first chapter is Gin save the world and break his scooter, all in the hopes of getting a fan. Then Oddjob sets up a test of courage, although I think it's a far bigger test of courage just staying in a room with Otei and Hidoro. Next, Oddjobs and the Shinsengumi go hunting for rhinoceros beetles during 2 chapters of classic Gintama humor that also continues to build up Sogo and Kagura's rivalry. Then, a cat-eared idol swindles Senpachi after stringing him along for 2 whole chapters until Gin's scooter is finally fixed by our old friend Gengai, the master mechanic. Gin then runs into the UPS woman, here to deliver 2 keys of Uncut Colombian, ordered off the dark web in order to become a mob don known as the White Yakasha. This leaves us with just 1 more chapter of Sachan being classic Sachan, which really makes you think both Gin and Zenzo really need a safety word. And now for the last arc of this video, we finally get a long arc. That's not 3 chapters, not 4 chapters, but 9 whole chapters. That is right, the day has finally come when I can talk about an arc that is a whole chapter longer than the amount of time needed for Frieza to blow up Namek. So if we use facts and logic, we can determine this arc happened within the span of 5 minutes. This arc was the first time Sorachi truly proved he can write a serious, intricate arc where different factions and big players who were previously set up in the story come back to battle it out for the sake of their individual ideologies and goals. It starts out with Katsura being cut down in the opening scene, already giving us the precedent that we are dealing with a serious threat. With a serial killer now on the loose, Elizabeth asks Oddjobs for help to find Katsura and hopes he's actually not dead. Senpachi is then nearly killed by the previously mentioned serial killer, but Gin rescues him, revealing that this mysterious man is actually Okada, the blind swordsman set up back in the infant strike arc. Gin and Okada duel, where we find out Okada has actually acquired a powerful sword that is integrated into him, allowing him to contort and manipulate his body. Using his newly gained power, Okada is able to critically injure Gin, but thanks to the help of Senpachi, they were able to trade with a similarly devastating blow. Meanwhile, Kagura, who is on the hunt for Katsura, has run into Takasugi Shinsuke. Yes, he's back and cooler than ever, and this time he has the help of his entire terrorist organization. Also introduced to Takasugi's right-hand men, Kawakami Banzai, the lolicon feminist Takachi Henpieta, the sharpshooter Kijima Matoko, and the previously mentioned Okada, who Shinsuke has been manipulating in order to achieve his goal of destruction. The plot of this arc mainly revolves around a legendary living demon sword known as the Benizakura, a sword forged by Tetsuko and Tetsuya's father and is fabled to be so sharp that it can cut anything. Takasugi, being a conniving bastard as usual, manipulates Tetsuya into giving him not only the Benizakura, but also the copy of the sword that Tetsuya had forged himself. Takasugi gives one of these swords to Okada, making him the human sword hybrid we have to deal with now, and uses the other to power a spaceship, because apparently forging a sword with enough hatred and intent to kill will create a living weapon that not only acts as fuel for a spaceship, but can infect and take over the human body like a crazy sci-fi virus. If you're curious how this makes sense whatsoever, it's actually quite simple. Anime logic. You know, the same reason Sanji's leg can just do that and not burn or hurt himself whatsoever. It's anime, man. Just turn off your brain and stop questioning it. Things will be a lot more enjoyable that way. We also get additional information on Gin's backstory when we learn about his past teacher, Shoyo-sensei. He is the man who taught Gintoki, Katsura, Takasuki, and Sakamoto growing up and inspired these boys to have their own individual paths of Bushido. All of these students have their own ideologies that support their reason to raise their swords and practice Bushido, Shoyo-sensei being the catalyst for all of it. Gintoki uses his sword to protect his country and the people he cares about. Katsura uses his to change his country, and Takasuki uses his to destroy the country. And Sakamoto, inspired by the American way, ditched his sword for a firearm and embraced capitalism. This arc ends with an all-out war between Katsura's faction, Takasugi's faction, the Harasami pirates Takasugi is now allies with, and the Odd Jobs trio, with the most pivotal moment being Gin's second fight with Okada. This is not only a superficially spectacular fight, but a battle between two differing philosophies. Okada aims to become a living weapon with the inherent purpose of destruction, literally becoming one with his own sword for that purpose. Gin, on the other hand, who uses his sword to protect and save lives, wins it out because unlike someone who seeks out destruction, those who protect actually have something to lose, giving them a real reason to fight. Overall, this arc is amazing, it's thrilling, interesting, and of course, comical. It not only proves that Sorachi can spin all of his previous setup into a long, serious arc with so much at play, but also leaves the audience knowing there's going to be much bigger problems and obstacles caused by Takasuki, and Gin and Katsura are going to have to deal with this in the future. And that's the end of today's episode of Watching Me Try. Keyword, try, to be entertaining while taking a retrospective look at Gintama, analyzing and reviewing the chapters as I reread them. If you enjoyed this video, check out the first part of the series on the left, or a video talking about the 3 best shonen protagonists on the right. Anyway, sorry for taking so long. I promise I wasn't procrastinating the whole 2 weeks. Hopefully I'll get better at making these videos faster in the future. So if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time.